I'm not really like a fan of like online relationships and things. I don't watch a lot of them, sadly. But I do remember that at some point I was like really obsessed or like involved in this one lesbian couple's relationship, and this was Domo and Chrissy, right? So I'm not gonna go into like the mechanics of that relationship, but I remember that their breakup really hurt me.
Okay, wait. So were you obsessed with the couple themselves, or were you just obsessed with the drama of the breakup?
I mean, okay. I mean, I did think they were cute. Like, I didn't follow them, like, vehemently. But when I did see them on my timeline, I was like, oh, doing the things, the girls, they're doing the things. But when I heard that they broke up, right, that was dramatic. Because I remember the breakup video, it was so sweet. And, they were so encouraging. And they looked like they cared about each other, as most breakup videos go.
Yeah.
But like after the breakup video, things went down. Right? They were ridiculous. And that happens a lot, a lot of these couples that we see online or celebrity couples, have the most beautiful relationships until they break up, and then we're like, oh, so it wasn't all that great. And a lot of people, when they hear that their favorite couple has like broken up or whatever, the usual comments are like, oh, I don't believe in love anymore. Love doesn't exist. I don't believe in it. That's the usual thing I see in the comment section. And I don't really think that's true.
Yeah.
I still do think that even though when people break up, love does exist.
And did exist in
that relationship.
Yeah, it's just this obsession that we've had for years, whereby we see long-term relationships as a marker of success.
And so in this video, we're going to tell you why we don't think that that's true. Before we go deep into the topic, we'd like to thank all our subscribers and everybody who likes and comments. We really appreciate it, and we see every single comment that you guys make.
Even the ones you delete, we see them all.
Yes. So thank you so much, and we really appreciate your support.
So, I mean, saying traditionally is a stretch, right? But previously in history, marriages?
I guess. I mean, yeah,
Marriages. Because people didn't really date, Capitalism made that come to life, right? That's a video for another day. But relationships and marriage was seen kind of like a business transaction. You're married with a purpose. You're going to get assets, or you're going to build something together and things like that.
Or you're trying to make sure that her kids are your kids.
Yes, it was another thing about ownership and stuff. And you need to make sure that only your seed gets your stuff when you die. And so when you look at businesses, right, like I hate accounts, but I learned one thing, right, and that's this going concern thing, where you do your reports knowing that your business is going to keep going, right? And basically it makes sense in terms of a business, because you're implementing practices that ensure that your business should keep running, for the foreseeable future, right? But when you look at relationships, people look at them like, oh, the point is that it just keeps going. Like that's the goal, instead of the practices that actually ensure that it does keep going.
And I guess you can see that in a lot of like in a lot of the relationships our grandparents or parents had, we usually see those as models of how we should have our relationships. And when no? Okay.
I don't.
Okay. But socially we always go like, oh, so-and-so's granny or whoever's mother has been married for 50 years, and that's just, they have the secrets to, how to have a happy, good relationship. Or nowadays, people are quick, and it's not how they used to do it back in the day. And that's why people are not having long-term, long-lasting relationships.
Yeah, not a lot of focus on like healthy or happy. It's just the fact that, why don't our relationships last as long as
our parents
back in the day, right? But when you look at what used to happen back in the day, it kind of made sense why relationships lasted long to begin with, because statistically, right, women are the ones that file more divorce papers than men. I think 2/3 of divorces are done by women, are filed by women, right? And that's because now women have this power for the first time in a long-ish time. They have this power.
That long.
I mean, in history, guys, you might think, oh my gosh, this was ages ago, but it hasn't even been around that long, and suddenly it's how things have always been done. It's weird, right? So now that women have this power, they can now actually decide, oh, okay, actually, I'm not happy in this marriage, and they are able to leave.
Because back in the day, it was about ownership.
Yes.
That's what marriage was. Women were part of the livestock and the house and the deed and everything. They didn't have, many rights. Even if they wanted a divorce, it was like under very strict circumstances that didn't make sense except to men. But I digress.
Like, very rarely was it ever about, oh, I'm marrying you because I love you, but that's kind of becoming the focus of marriage and like relationships now is, oh, I love this person and I want to be with you forever. You're my soulmate. You're the one. We've all heard that when someone's like, you're the one for me. You're my soulmate. And that's weird.
I don't think it's weird. I think it can be sweet sometimes.
Is it?
It depends. But now we're gonna...
It's only sweet when I say it to you.
Okay.
Okay, so this idea of soulmates or finding someone that completes you and stuff like that is actually from some ancient mythology that I will not lie to you that I know. But basically, I think one of these gods, Zeus.
It wasn't the god. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, back in the day, allegedly, people were made up of like 8 limbs and 2 heads and 2 hearts.
It was one head with 2 faces.
Oh, okay. There was one head with 2 faces, and then you had like your 4 arms and 4 legs and 2 hearts and everything. So basically just 2 people splashed into one.
And basically what they say happened, from mythology, is that Zeus and the other gods are like, oh, you know what, these humans, they're really powerful, so we need to restrict their power without, destroying them, because we still kind of need them to worship us and stuff. So what they did is that they tore the humans in half, basically, and separated us.
Yeah. So that they could get double the praises. And keep us weak and dependent on them also, allegedly.
And then the story goes that we are always in search of our other piece, our other half.
Yeah.
In order to
find peace
or become one again. And that's where the idea of a soulmate kind of comes from.
Yeah, but the actual word soulmate was documented to have been used for the first time in 1822 by, of course, a poet.
Some dude was just writing a letter and people were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna use this as a term for true love and shit. And today we see that word used a lot in media, our movies, the books we read, the music we listen to. Everything is just full of like soulmate, that type of shit. So it would make sense that we do take this and try to replicate it in our own relationships and even project it onto other people's relationships,
True.
Even though we don't know like what happens in other people's relationships.
The very idea of having your soulmate and your one true love who will love you no matter what because they are made for you and they're just for you is kind of, when you look deeper into it, a little messed up. Because it really just encourages complacency.
Like if you look at like the movies that I've seen, like young adult movies especially, where you have this one couple, they're true one couple soulmate, and they go through a lot of shit, right? They'll fight, break up, and then be apart, and then all of a sudden they just realize that this is my one and true love, and then they come back together and they live happily ever after.
No one else for me, Tessa. No one.
Yeah, they didn't resolve these abusive behaviors. They didn't talk about anything. They're not working towards what this relationship actually means besides the basis that, this is my soulmate, so it should work.
And even I have been in a situation.
Is it?
Like that.
Is it?
So basically when I was 11 years old, I think I was 11 years old, I saw this guy, right, at school. And basically what he did was, I saw him from the field, right, on the field. It was Civi's Day. And we were having fun during break, and he was dancing, and people around him or whatever surrounding him and shit. And then he did the worm, and I thought that shit was so cool. I thought, ooh, that's him. That is the one.
So all I had to do was the worm.
The worm. We did the worm on the grass. And that was when I was like, oh my gosh, this is the one. And the way things happened afterwards made me feel like, oh my gosh, this is the person that God has put inside in my life, And I really believe that this was gonna be, the one and true love of my life. And unfortunately, that belief kind of like, blinded me to a lot of things that, just weren't working in the relationship. And I was very delusional. And I was delusional for a very long time. For like
8 years.
8 years. 8 years. Maybe even longer. I don't know. I think 8 years. 8 years. Very delusional. Because I thought that this was the person I was supposed to end up with. So, yeah. It doesn't always work like that. Complacency. Which brings us to the other problem we have with the whole idea of having a soulmate, which is that you believe that you only have one true love.
True.
And that if you break up with someone, let's say, that the love wasn't real.
Yeah.
Like I remember in high school, we all had that thing where we believed that, you couldn't talk about your relationship unless it was like 3 months. And we made fun of people who had relationships for like a week or 2 or a month because we thought their relationships weren't good relationships.
Weren't even real.
Yeah,
it wasn't real. It's like, if we dated less than 3 months, it was a free trial.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, some of them were free trials, I promise.
Truly. But we won't get into that. That's not what this video is about.
But basically, that whole idea that, everyone is a free trial before you meet the love of your life or your soulmate. And that's not true, because I think relationships can be meaningful.
True.
And be good and successful without necessarily having to last. Yeah.
We even had hesitations about making this video because we're like, we haven't been together for that long, so no one will take our advice seriously. Because I don't know, you feel like unless you've made it to 20 years of marriage, only then are you entitled to speak on love and relationships and things like that. But
even those people like get divorced. Like, people will get like divorced. Like, I will always remember watching what was this couple? What was that show? The Real Desperate Housewives. Watching Desperate Housewives, and I watched it at such an older age. But basically, in Desperate Housewives, there's that couple. There's Lynette and Tom Scarborough. I don't remember. Lynette and Tom. Okay, and they were basically like the role model of like relationships in the show. They had kids. They had their jobs, and they looked so.
No, he had a job. She didn't.
Okay, well, at some point she did before they had kids.
Sure.
And they looked like they were the most stable and like looked like they were
the real relationship.
And at the end of the show, like spoiler alert, like immediately stop watching if you wanna, go and watch the show.
And we encourage you to watch this show.
But anyways, they break up, right? They break up, and it's the healthiest thing, because if you watch it properly, you'll see how these not toxic, but you see the incompatibility between them as you watch the show. Like, it looks like small things, but it kind of builds up, and you feel happy for them at the end.
Yeah, you're like, finally, this was the right choice, And that's the whole thing. Like, we can't look at people and be like, because they've made it long, they must know what they're doing. You have no idea what the inner workings of them as individuals and in their relationship actually is.
Because the realities of long-term relationships are much deeper than what we see on the surface.
True.
For one thing, love changes, I don't love her the same way I did the first time we met.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. It's a completely different game now, know? And that's okay. But sometimes people feel like, once the love changes, that could be a bad thing.
Yeah, basically. Like, it's a pretty well understood thing, because you have like the honeymoon phase. Everyone kind of understands that love changes, but then when it happens, we're surprised.
Yeah.
And we see it like a negative thing, when it doesn't necessarily have to be. Right. And the other reality of a long-term relationship is that people in the relationship change. Because life happens. If you look at what has happened in a year, and then you look at what will happen in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you can't possibly expect this person to be the same way each and every year. So these people change. And it's really like, did you really expect me to be the same 20-something year old you married when I'm in my 50s? Like genuinely, that's gonna be the reason.
And people grow as well, you know. Sometimes at some point in the relationship, you might just want something different, and we don't always grow at the same pace or in the same directions.
True.
We could also end up wanting very different things from our experiences in this one relationship. And there's also this one thing that, you know, I didn't really take seriously when I was a kid, but that whole idea that you need more than love to make a relationship work. And I will move a little bit forward and add in that you need more than just the same set of beliefs to kind of make a relationship work, you know, because I grew up in a very religious home, and not a religious home, but I guess, you know, religious home. And one of the ideas when it comes to, you know, when picking a partner is that you have to be equally yoked, right? That stuff, I don't know, yoked. But basically, it just sums down to, you know, you need to be with a believer or someone of the same religion or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
But sometimes that doesn't really necessarily mean that the relationship is going to work or you guys are going to be compatible. You can be compatible in one instance, like, oh, we believe in God, but that doesn't mean that we deal with things the same way in a sense, or that we don't necessarily have the same necessary skills to deal with conflict in a relationship. You know, so I think, yeah, you can have, you know, the same beliefs or whatever, but at some point trouble will happen where you guys will disagree, and you guys need to be able to work through that.
Conflict resolution, because you are individuals, and I guess keeping that sense of your individuality is important, because if you just constantly give way and become the submissive, you know, partner, you build up resentment, you know, and then that change in behavior happens, and then it just becomes a domino effect of actually realizing you're not in a happy relationship, even though it's based off of love and the same set of beliefs. People are more than just that.
There's a lot that goes into what makes a relationship. So basically, what we're trying to say here is that we don't necessarily think that the goals of having a relationship to necessarily be about prolonging it. But more about enjoying it and having loving, you know, progressive relationships with one another.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, like the relationship should last however long it should, in order for both partners to grow and be healthy and happy as individuals and as a unit, rather than just, oh, we have to stick together just because it's what is done and what should happen.
And I know that we also feel like a fear of being called failures because of, you know, our relationships not lasting a certain period or breakups. And I understand, because breakups do hurt. That's a real thing. And that's not a bad thing necessarily. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
So with what we've said in mind, and keeping in mind that the longevity of a relationship is just the byproduct of the systems in the relationship, what then would you consider a healthy relationship?
Yeah, how do you guys determine what success means in your relationships?
Yeah.
So let us know in the comment section, and
see you next time.